What is its history? Because if you want to understand something, you have to understand the historical context behind it. Unfortunately, many people, they don't even study history, they don't even know what's going on in the rest of the world, they don't know the least, they don't even know the most minor thing about history at all. Whether it be modern history or ancient history, and this is extremely problematic. So we must understand what is the history of the origin of the theory, how did it come about, what was going through Darwin's mind when it came about, what was going through the minds of the scientists when they were accepting it or when they were rejecting it. Then, the importance of the theory. Why is the theory so important? Why can't we just claim that nature formed by chance coincidence without having this theory? Why did we have to wait all the way up till Darwin's time, or actually a little bit before Darwin's time, because other people like Wallace actually formulated the theory of natural selection before him, but why did we have to wait so long? And then, how is it supposed to work? Explanation of how the theory actually works, because many people, they might even be a bio major, they might even have gone through, studied biology in high school, for example, but they really don't even know how the theory itself works. They just have a somewhat idea in their mind, but they don't know exactly how it's supposed to work. And then, what is needed for the theory to be legitimate? In order for the theory to be considered legitimate by anyone, or by the scientific community, or by any human being, what is needed in order to, not necessarily prove, but to be considered legitimate? Okay? And then, what are the reasons why it's accepted and rejected? Many people accept the theory. Many people reject the theory. What are the reasons behind that? And then, what are the effects of this theory on the individual and the society? So these are the topics to be covered. History of the theory's origin. First of all, if you look at, from a European context, because this is where Darwin was, from a European context, we see that in Europe, there came about what's known as the Copernican Revolution, where Copernicus in 1543, he wrote a book called On Revolutions of the Celestial Spheres. And basically what his point was, why they call it a revolution, there's a pun on it, but he's saying that the Earth is not the center of the universe. The Earth is not the center of the universe, and this is the model that was accepted in his location at that time. And he's saying, no, that's incorrect. And he publishes this book, and he says, no, that is the sun is the center of the universe, or the sun is the center of the solar system in reality. So this is the point he's trying to make, and this brings about a revolution. And many people reject the theory. Many people reject the theory at this time. Many people are being tortured. Many people are being harassed as the theory is not being accepted. So this is a major landmark in the field of science in reality. So you see, after that, what happens comes what's known as the Darwinian Revolution, you can say. In 1859, Charles Darwin publishes his book, Origin of the Species. And what he's saying, I'm making a revolution as well. A revolution similar to Copernicus, that mankind is not the center of life, but just another species. Okay, so now, this is extremely important, because the majority of people in the world, what do they think? They feel that the human being is actually the center of life, generally speaking. That's something natural that human beings have. So they consider themselves somewhat superior to all other life. So they consider themselves special as a human being, as a human race. So for example, when you eat that hamburger, right? You slaughtered a cow, right? You killed a living being. A living being was sacrificed and killed so you could eat that food. But most people, they don't have a major problem with that. Some people do, but most people don't have a major problem with that. Now, if you did the same thing to a human being and you slaughtered the human being, there would be a major problem. Everyone would say, how could you do such a thing? That's ridiculous. So there's something going on that says there's something special about human beings. So people had this mentality that, look, man is the center of the universe. The world kind of revolves around us, not in a selfish sense, but there's something special about us. There's something special about us, and what Darwin, in reality, what's going on in this Darwinian revolution is that mankind, you're nothing special. You're just a little bit more developed. You're not that special. You're not the center of life. You're just another species. Like any other living human being, like any other living being in the world, except you're a little bit more evolved. So this is an extremely revolutionary concept. It's not something to be taken lightly. This is a very important idea that's coming at this time. So we continue with the history of the theory's origin. Darwin was studying at that time in Cambridge University in England. And the current model, the current theory, the current model that he's being taught at his school and around Europe at that time is design, what we've already discussed. And the textbook, one of the textbooks that he was probably studying, because it was a textbook in Cambridge University, is a very famous book called Natural Theology by William Paley, philosopher / scientist. And a preacher as well. So this book, basically, what it's saying is Paley was making an argument, and he's saying, look, you compare the structural complexity of a watch. He gives an example of a watch. You compare the structural complexity of a watch to the immune system, to the eye, to the blood clotting mechanism, to anything complex in nature, and you're not going to say that came about by chance. You're going to say that it was designed. So this is Paley's argument, is that look, if you're walking through the desert and you find a watch on the floor, fully developed watch, what would you think? Immediately, you wouldn't say that the watch, probably somehow formed in the desert by itself. Now some people claim faulty logic on this, but we'll get to that later. Now, what they're saying is that normally, as a human, you would not make that claim. You wouldn't say that this randomly came about. They're saying the same thing with the complexity of these systems, such as the eye. Look at this complexity. The immune system. Look at the blood clotting system. Now, before we showed, look at the human cell. What he's saying is, don't tell me that these things came about by chance. There's a design there. They must have had a designer. So this is one of the books that Darwin was probably studying at the time in Cambridge University. So then what happens is Darwin, after graduating, he goes on an expedition after graduating, and what was he seeking? He was seeking a naturalistic explanation rather than Paley's supernaturalistic explanation to the origin of life, or to how life came about, or to the complexity in these things. Not necessarily why life came about, but to the complexity in these things. Why was he doing that? Because, this is important, is that because atheists could not be intellectually satisfied without an explanation. So that means at that time, you can be an atheist, but you could not necessarily be intellectually satisfied, because you need to give an explanation to the thing. So David Hume, for example, he says, you look around, he's one of the famous philosophers, and this is generalizing his argument a little bit. It's a little bit more complex, but he's basically saying, so look at all the complex things you see around the world, you look at the human cell, you look at all these things. Of course, human cell wasn't discovered at that time, but you look at the blood clotting mechanism and all these things, and what? He says, it doesn't need an explanation. I don't believe in all this, and it doesn't need an explanation. I don't feel why I need to explain it. I don't need to explain it. This is a very minority position, because most people would say, what are you doing? You don't think this calls out for an explanation? Then what's going on? You can't have this stance. You can't be intellectually fulfilled. So until Darwin's time, until he explains the mechanism, it's difficult to be an intellectually satisfied atheist. And all the atheists could say before Darwin's time is, I have no explanation for complex design in the world. All I know is that God isn't a good one. So they can deny it, but they can't affirm another explanation. So going to the story of Imam Abu Hanifa, just to give you an example. This is a Muslim scholar, lived a long time ago, over 1,000 years ago. He basically had a run-in with some atheists. He had a debate with some atheists, and he accepted the debate. And he said to them, okay, I accept your debate. We're going to meet at this time across the river bank, and we'll set this time, whatever time he said, let's say 7 o'clock. He said, be there 7 o'clock? He said, okay, I'll be there 7 o'clock. And when the time for the meeting came, atheists are there and they're waiting. Say, where's this guy? He's supposed to be an honest guy. He's a respected imam, respected religious scholar in the society. And it's 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30. This guy's not showing up. Say, what is this? And the guy comes late. Imam Abu Hanifa comes like about an hour, 2 hours late. And said, what is this? You're supposed to be a respected member of the community. What's going on? What kind of game are you playing here? And he said, no, look, I'm telling you honestly. I'm serious. You're not going to believe what happened. That I was coming down here, and I realized that the boat at the river that I was supposed to cross the river, the boat, it fell apart. It broke apart. And I couldn't cross the river, and I didn't know what to do, and I was waiting, and all of a sudden, lightning struck,